What's going on, guys? It's Tyler and Andrew from Sideline Signal. Obviously, a crazy week one of college football. So glad to be back. Obviously, sending off Lee Corso. Every team he picked won. Every team he coached for, played for, won, which I thought was great, among other crazy storylines. And we'll get into it. Andrew, what are your first reactionary thoughts to college football week one?
Yeah, like you said, it was a crazy week. Pretty emotional seeing the last game day for Lee Corso. But yeah, we got blessed with some pretty good matchups. You're happy about one, obviously LSU versus Clemson. Alabama, Florida State was a great game. If you like an upset, obviously not if you're an Alabama fan. Miami, Notre Dame. There's a lot of great matchups, fun ones to watch. Obviously, Texas, Ohio State too. So we got blessed with a really great week one. I was overall really happy. A lot of good takeaways, some good overreactions to kind of go through. But yeah, I think this was a big pressure year for college football with changing of the playoffs again, NIL, the Michigan investigation. So we wanted a really strong week one to kind of roll into, and I think we got a really good one.
We're so back. Week one was amazing. Obviously, week two isn't as flashy as week one, but we have a lot to talk about there with some games, some highlights there. We got some positives and some negatives for you in terms of week one. Andrew, I'll let you get it started with one of your positives.
Yeah, so I'm not really going to talk about it from a statistical perspective, but my first positive was definitely Carson Beck coming into that Miami team. Everyone kind of talked about it last year at Georgia. He really struggled, which is kind of funny to say because Georgia was so good. And the Georgia system is kind of like the 49ers system from the NFL of the last few years, where you can kind of put anybody in there and they'll be successful. So yeah, he had a lot of flat games in the regular season last year at Georgia. Obviously, he goes down in the SEC championship with that elbow injury, missed the playoffs, and his draft stock was gone. So he decided to come back for another year. He transfers to Miami, who was just losing Cam Ward and honestly their entire offense from last year, Arroyo, Restrepo. Um, so there's a lot of big question marks of how he was going to go into that Miami system with Mario Cristobal. And I thought he looked great. I mean, it was a big test at home week one. It was raining too, playing Notre Dame, who were in the national championship last year, have one of the best young coaches in Marcus Freeman. And they were able to get a nice win. Obviously, it was by a field goal, but you look at it, Jeremiah Love has been considered a Heisman favorite. So they have a top tier running back. Obviously, I know that's not anybody Carson Beck goes against, but it's still a very difficult team in Notre Dame. You're playing them at home. There's a lot of expectations, a lot of pressure on Carson Beck to perform. And I thought he really stepped up. He looked like a good leader. He has a great receiver core, too. They were making some crazy catches throughout the game, but he looked really poised and he looks like Carson Beck of the past, not from last season. So I was really really happy for Carson Beck, and he's definitely one of my big positive takeaways from week one.
Yeah, the word is definitely poised. He looked like an NFL quarterback. I'll say that simply. We talk about Nuss, we talk about Lenore Sellers. Carson Beck should be up there in terms of his week one performance. He played really well. He took what the defense gave him. Notre Dame was a top five defense last year. They lost a lot of guys, but it's still top 10 in my mind. And he looked very good. Didn't force throws. We saw that a lot at Georgia last year. He was just chucking the ball into triple and double coverage, just hoping that the wide receiver would come down to it. Obviously Miami's got a similar run game to Georgia, not as good, and he was able to supplement that very well. He does not need to be the star at Miami, similar to Georgia, but he needs to do a little more, and I think he did that, and that was a very impressive win for Miami. And the Hurricanes are a team to watch going forward there. So yeah, it was a very fun game to watch, and Carson Beck looked really good. For my first positive, I'm going to go with the Florida State Seminoles. They won 31-17 over Alabama at home. They dominated in the trenches on both sides of the ball, limited Alabama to under 90 rushing yards on over 25 carries, which is just insane when you talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide. Tommy Castellanos talked trash the entire offseason. Andrew and I know this. We were both going like, what is this guy talking about? And then they backed it up. One of the positive sides of the transfer portal is that a team like this can go in, grab 30, 40 guys, put them on the field. They mesh well together, and Mike Norvell is no longer on the hot seat, at least for right now. They looked really good, really cohesive. They were exciting. Gus Malzahn as the play caller. did an amazing job putting them in positions to succeed offensively. And then that defense looked like Florida State defense of the past when they were very successful. So just an overall great team win. And they looked better than Alabama in all phases of the game, which is something that I never thought I would say, in any year really. But Alabama does not look like the Saban era Alabama, and Florida State took advantage of that and got the W. So definitely impressive, and I know Seminoles fans are happy to see this.
Oh yeah, that definitely was a game to remember. Hopefully, it's not their only big game that they win this year for the Florida State program. But yeah, I agree. All phases of the game, Florida State looked dominant. Gus Malzahn, definitely coach of the week for me, offensively. I'll get into my defensive coach of the week in a little bit, but yeah, I think when you look at it, outside of the opening drive for Alabama, they looked so stagnant. Ty Simpson kind of struggled once he started getting under pressure into those unscripted drives, but it's really funny because I was sitting here in the offseason. I made a YouTube video talking about what went wrong with Florida, and a big reason that they struggled was just a bad portal, and that the portal shouldn't necessarily be your solution to fix holes in your team. And clearly last year it wasn't, but
Yeah.
they really proved me wrong. I wasn't necessarily high or low. I was kind of indifferent to Tommy Castellanos, but he really, really played well. He was able to pass the ball well and run well. He was just all around very, very solid performance. And I know obviously we look like fools because we had them going, what was it, 6-6 in our
Yeah.
ACC predictions. But I think the biggest rationale was we weren't sure how that defense was going to look. They looked really strong, and we weren't sure Castellanos and Squirrel White were going to be able to be the big difference. Clearly, they both played exceptionally well. It's week one, so we still got to wait. This is kind of the era of overreactions, but definitely a great home win. It was really funny to see the fans rush the field for a week one win, but they're excited after a terrible season last year. So I'm riding high with the Seminoles. I'm not ready to panic on Bama yet. It's week one. They're gonna figure it out. It's a brand new, unproven quarterback. Things take time. Do I think they're gonna win in the Natty? Probably not after that performance, but I'm not ready to say they're going to lose 4 or 5 games quite yet.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. There's a lot of time to bounce back, and Kalen DeBoer, there's a reason why he's at Alabama. He wins. At Washington, he won. Before that, he won. All the jobs prior, he won. So they're gonna figure it out. I thought this win had more to do with Florida State than it did Alabama, and they just impressed me. And you're right, like 6-6, it kind of looks silly, but obviously it's week one. There's a lot of time. And it's a weaker ACC, so maybe we'll be talking about Florida State getting into maybe that championship game, you know, competing up there. Their schedule isn't too horrible, but it's not easy either. So we'll see as the weeks follow.
Definitely. It's going to be a fun team to watch. They're either going to exceed all expectations or crash and burn. We don't know yet. We'll wait and see for that. But segueing to my other positive, I'm staying with another coaching performance. One of my biggest takeaways, Matt Patricia, defensive coach of the week for me. And yes, you can look at it and say Texas's offense looked horrible because they did. But what a job he did scheming them. I said in my hot takes prior to the season that I thought we were going to see some regression out of Ohio State, and maybe we still will. But when I look at this, one of the big reasons that I said that in the offseason was Ohio State were losing 9 guys on their defense. And yes, they're returning Caleb Downs, who to me is probably going to be the Bednarik winner, or at least a finalist yet again. And the only other one was Igbinosun, who was a penalty magnet last year. I wasn't sure how strong this defense was going to look. I thought there was going to be some glaring holes. And boy, did Matt Patricia scheme up a phenomenal game plan. Arch Manning was under pressure a lot. He looked scared. He all his throws, he was throwing sidearmed half of his short range passes because he was afraid of the contact. And he really was struggling. They get a staple win at home versus Texas. Again, they didn't look that amazing, but defensively they were very strong. And I saw something on Twitter about it that made a lot of sense to me is you look at Matt Patricia when he was the DC of the Patriots way back when, and even a little bit when he was the head coach of the Lions, although they struggled. He's used to having a game plan and scheme around some of the best quarterbacks ever. And now you go into college and you're scheming week one against a guy who's not really taken any meaningful reps outside of some non-conference games last year. It's got to be a night and day easier to know how can I exploit this kid's weaknesses, and especially for Ohio State in some of these weaker games, it's going to be so much easier for them to shut down an offense. And so I was really impressed. I wasn't sure how Patricia was going to handle the transition from the NFL game to the college game because the speed's a little different, the physicality is a little different. It's a different game through and through. So I was questioning how him paired with a brand new defense, how that was going to be able to handle, especially a team like Texas week one. And he stepped up and they looked good. So definitely a positive takeaway for me.
Yeah, there's something to be said about NFL coordinators making it down to the college level. Wink Martindale at Michigan, he's had some master classes as well last year. Obviously, locked up Ohio State last year, that impressive offense that ended up winning the national title. So when you look at Matt Patricia, Wink Martindale, I can't wait for them to actually have to scheme against each other, or not against each other directly, but in the same game. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It was impressive. Arch Manning was flustered the entire time. As you said, sidearm, back foot, did not look comfortable even when he had time. They're on the ground. They did decent, Texas, but they were stopped multiple times when it counted. Obviously, only scoring 7 points on an offense that we expected to be what, top five in the country. I assume so. So it speaks a lot to the professionalism that the NFL brings. The schemes that you can run in college compared to the NFL, and just quite frankly, the personnel. On defense, it's a lot easier to scheme in college because the offense isn't as professional, obviously, compared to the NFL. When you're scheming against Peyton Manning in his prime, and Tom Brady obviously was on the same team as Tom Brady, but if you have to scheme against guys like that, Arch Manning is kind of, you're licking your chops there. You're ready to go against him, and he showed out. I thought just from start to finish, it was great. And something to be said about Igmanosin, as you talked about, penalty magnet. He was impressive as well. So I do wonder what kind of one-on-one coaching, or what that camp looked like for him, because he locked up the entire game. He was all over it. You saw the ferocity in the defense. They were hype after every single play, and for good reason. Matt Patricia, man, you may be getting a call from the NFL at the end of this year, depending on how you keep that going for Ohio State. Very impressive.
Yeah, it's good. They have a semi easy schedule this year, but they still got Michigan and Penn State to play, so we'll see how that defense handles those matchups as we go forward.
Yeah, and that'll be later in the year, obviously. So we'll see how the tune-ups go until then. My other positive is going to be the Tennessee Volunteers, and specifically Joey Aguilar. Because I felt like we talked about Nico and Nico and Nico and Nico to UCLA, and Joey Aguilar, this guy who struggled very badly at App State last year, but was someone that led App State to multiple Sun Belt championships before then, who came into Tennessee. I was high on him because I was watching the Sun Belt games. I can't tell you why, but I was. And he produced. They had explosive play after explosive play. They got the run game going. They got the pass game going. And while their defense wasn't amazing, they got it done. They won 45-26 over what I think is going to be a pretty good Syracuse team, maybe like a 7, 8, maybe even 9 win Syracuse team. And they handled them from the get-go. There was some eeks, like maybe you thought Syracuse was coming back, but not really. They put it to bed quite well, and they got the job done. And now I'm thinking Tennessee, like we had them as a mid-tier SEC team, but depending on like how you catch these games, like if they're able to beat Alabama, if they sneak one past Georgia or something like that, this is a team that can compete in my eyes. And I really just needed to see it before I could say it. But Joey Aguilar impressed me. Tennessee Volunteers, Josh Heupel's got his team, and he's got a quarterback that's not going to be complaining the entire season, as we saw Nico did, as we found out later in the offseason.
Yeah, I'll keep my points brief because I agree with you. I thought Aguilar looked really good. Great way to step up, handling the pressure of going to an SEC team from the Sun Belt. Very impressive. I agree. I think Tennessee looked a lot better than maybe you and I had in mind, although we thought that they were still going to be solid. But that gauntlet of an SEC, it's hard to kind of pinpoint exactly where in the standings they'll be. This is more of a comment for the team as a whole. They got to get a little bit stronger defensively. Syracuse is not bad. I agree. I think they're underrated within this ACC. But once they get into that SEC schedule,
Yeah.
defense is going to have to step up because you can't really afford to be having shootouts every single game. You got to be able to let your offense cook. But yeah, I thought their offense was firing on all cylinders. They looked solid, even though they lost a couple key guys from last year. And yeah, I think Aguilar definitely could be a very, very solid name for them this year.
Yeah, and obviously we'll see, as you said, the SEC is loaded, and this is considerably one of their easier games, if you want to call it that. So we'll see how they fare, but good way to start off the season there. Going into some negatives now. The floor is yours, Andrew. What you got for your first negative?
Yeah, this one I guess should come as no surprise to anybody, but boy, did Maddox Madsen and the Boise State Broncos look horrible. I mean, again, this was a team in the G5 you and I weren't very high on. We didn't have them as the contender where everybody else pretty much just plugged them in and said, "Oh, it's going to be Boise State again." I don't think I necessarily thought this was the game that they were going to lose because South Florida has been so hard to predict how they're going to be. Uh, but yeah, no, they could not stop the run. And this was a USF offense that honestly is not that impressive. Byron Brown, yes, he can run and he's athletic. He showed his legs against them and looked pretty good. But throwing the ball, they have a very weak pass game. And Boise State couldn't handle either aspects of the game. And then you look offensively, oh my gosh, they were turnover machines. They looked awful. Madsen looked like he had never thrown a ball before. I was shocked to see the product. And you made a TikTok about it where it's really the Ashton Genty hangover. And it kind of proves why. I mean, obviously, Genty
Should have
was as
won.
good as he was, but it
Yeah.
makes sense why they were giving him 30 carries a game because we can't move the ball without a guy who's almost breaking Barry Sanders' record. Yeah, they looked awful. Rightfully so, they drop out of the top 25. I don't know if I see them winning the Mountain West. I mean, I will say UNLV survived a scare week one against Idaho State, but I think UNLV could win the Mountain West this year. I think if I had to pick a Mountain West team to be a contender for the G5, it'd be UNLV. But obviously, you and I are both pretty big on Tulane, so
Yeah.
that's the team we're riding with. They had a good win against Northwestern, but yeah, Maddox Mazden and the Boise State Broncos, I'm not high on them. I'm selling their stocks, getting as much value as I can. I don't see them getting anywhere near the playoff this year.
Yeah, and this is a team that I think maybe thought they were better than they were. Maybe they thought they didn't need to earn it as badly, but they quite literally got ran over. Byron Brown trucked multiple guys. You guys can look up the pictures if you want. Just every picture is just him running someone over. I know, I looked. But yeah, that was quite frankly embarrassing for a team that was expected to go undefeated or like get there one loss or undefeated to the playoff. And it just shows how amazing Ashton Genty was because their O-line, they didn't lose much, they didn't add much, but the running backs had nothing. They had nothing, and USF is not a good defense. Middle of the country or lower actually in terms of defense. And Ashton Genty should have won the Heisman. I'll stand on that point. And this proves it even more, in my opinion. To get blown out like that is pretty crazy. And yeah, I think in terms of the Mountain West, it shifts to UNLV. And UNLV doesn't look that solid either. So I don't really know. Maybe there's a dark horse. Obviously, we don't know too much about the Mountain West. But Boise State, that was embarrassing. That was really embarrassing. I thought it was going to be a tight game at worst. But then to lose by 20 plus points is not great. And Maddox Mazden was terrible. I don't know if he would start many other places in the country based on that film. So yeah, it's just not great for Boise State and the Broncos. They got to figure it out. They got to figure
Yeah,
it out
that
very,
they
very
do. They
quickly.
definitely need to figure it out. You know, I, again, not a team that you and I were high on, so our expectations weren't as high on them. But again, I don't think either of us would have picked this game as one of the games they lose.
No, definitely not. So, getting into my first negative. Now, I want to preface this by saying kind of honorable mentions. Obviously, we've talked about Alabama already. The media has talked about them at nauseum. North Carolina as well, talked about ad nauseum already. So, I'm not going to pick either one of these teams, but I'm going to pick out like a lesser known team, or not lesser known, but like on in terms of the college football stage, I'm going to go with the Indiana Hoosiers and Kirk Cignetti. Um, they got the win. Yeah, they beat Old Dominion 27-13. Now, Kirk and Eddie trashed the SEC, which is obviously my conference, and said, "Oh, we're going to schedule like the SEC. We're going to have weak scheduling." They canceled the home and home with Virginia. And then you beat an average Sun Belt team by 14 points at home, and their offense looked bad. Their defense held it together. Now, their defense was good, but it's against this Old Dominion. But Fernando Mendoza looked bad. The running game was not good. And, that was a game for the entirety of the game. They pulled away at the very end. But for a team that made the playoff last year, especially after canceling a home on home against Virginia, Virginia's not that good, in terms of the Power Four. They're on the lower tier. But to say what you said and then go out there and not back it up, uh, that doesn't look great. And personally, I don't see them as a top 25 team. I got to look here. Yeah, they're 23rd right now in the week 2 AP poll. I wouldn't have had them in. I would have dropped them out because I thought that there were more teams that looked better than them. Uh, Obviously, we'll see. A win's a win. They're 1-0, same as anyone else. It doesn't matter if you win by 50 or 1. But that was not a great look for a guy that just goes out, trashes the SEC, and then doesn't back it up.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from with the comments. Being a Big Ten guy, I'm gonna plead the fifth on it. But I agree. I think it's kind of a bad look when you schedule the home and home with UVA, which is a better matchup for a home and
Yeah.
home, than, let's say ODU. I mean, Virginia
Yeah.
is definitely a better program than ODU is,
Yeah.
especially in Virginia as a whole, but as the country as a whole. But I mean, yeah, I was not impressed with them at all. Very lackluster performance. This is again, it's week one, first game of the season. There's going to be a lot of mishaps, so you're fine tuning it. But I agree. I think my perception of Indiana and the Big Ten hierarchy has kind of dropped a little. Um, at going in, obviously, I was big on Illinois in the offseason, but I kind of had Indiana at or around Illinois. But now I think Illinois, I mean, granted, Illinois got a 52-3 win against Western Illinois, so it's not
Yeah.
like they played anyone good, but I think that the performance was much more fluid and poised out of Illinois than Indiana. I agree with you. If they would have dropped Indiana out of the top 25, I would have been okay with it. I wouldn't have been upset. And they really got to figure it out. They got to fine tune stuff because once they get into the Big Ten play, Indiana's got to play Illinois. I know they got to play Ohio State, I believe. So
Yeah.
there's difficult matchups. It's not going to be as easy for them last year as last year was, where they only had to play Ohio State. So definitely a team that I'm a little concerned with going forward.
Yeah, so I'm just going to point it out here. They got to play Illinois at home. They got to go to Iowa. They got to go to Oregon. They play Michigan State at home. They play at Penn State and they host Wisconsin. They got to go to Maryland as well. So no Ohio State, but Penn State, Oregon, Iowa, Illinois are 4 games that I could really see them losing all 4 of those games. And that's before they played this game. So we'll see, but it may have been a 1 year thing for Indiana.
Yeah, no kidding. It's gonna be interesting to watch them to see if they can handle it. I don't think they will, but I'll give another honorable mention too, like you did. I was gonna bring them up, but I think I'd rather just talk about one game with my 2 points there. But honorable mention to Baylor's run defense as a negative. Boy, was it bad against Auburn. They allowed 308 rushing yards in their 38-24 home loss against Auburn. It was terrible. They could not contain Jackson Arnold, who, I mean, let's be honest, he's not an elite quarterback.
No.
Arnold's good with his legs, but he is not a guy that you really have to hardcore game plan for. And to allow, obviously, it wasn't all him with 308, but to allow 308 rushing yards is abysmal. Also, their offense, they threw for 400 yards and they only scored 24 points. Like that is not good. We were big on Baylor. They had a lot of returning pieces. Boy, am I panicking about them.
Yeah.
That's my honorable mention. I want to talk about both teams and some of their issues in this Miami Notre Dame game. It was an exciting game. We talked about it a little about Carson Beck. I had a great time watching it. It was a fun matchup. Starting with Notre Dame, what are we doing with your play calling? You have a Heisman contender at running back, Jeremiah Love. You have the best running back in the country. 10 touches? What are we talking about? And I guess maybe you can make the case that they want to get CJ Carr more confident in throwing the ball, going against a pretty solid defense in Miami, get him used to it because they're rolling into Texas A&M next week.
Yep.
So another difficult matchup. You want him to be confident. But my God, you have the best running back in the country and he gets 10 touches. What are we doing here? They couldn't move the ball that well. They had a couple good drives, but at the end of the day, if you want to establish and give confidence to a quarterback, you run the ball. You take the pressure off of his pass game and you put it on the run game so that when he passes, it's not so choreographed. And it's like they forgot they had Jeremiah Love. I was yelling at my TV screen at Marcus Freeman, like, what are we doing? Very frustrating. I'm sure Irish fans are mad too that obviously they lose, but that their star player doesn't get the love that he deserves. And then looking at Miami, this is a staple of Mario Cristobal. I talked about it a little bit in my AP reaction. Game management, man, especially clock management. He struggled with it at Oregon. He struggled with it so far at Miami, and he struggles with it again this weekend. You're late into the fourth quarter. You're tied, or it's a close game at that point. I believe they were tied. Uh,
Yeah.
minute left. You're trying to kill clock, and you don't know how many timeouts the opponent has left. Minute left. It's 3rd and 8. You're running it up the gut. They have a timeout. They cut to Cristobal and he's complaining at the ref saying, "How are you like? How did they don't have any timeouts? Why are you stopping the clock?" And they did. That's going to lose them games if you cannot have proper. It makes me so angry. Thinking back to Oregon losing against Auburn with horrible clock management with Cristobal. But if you are going to be a competitive program nationally, game management is one of the most important things you have to execute. And yes, they were able to still get a win. Their defense stepped up big on Notre Dame's final drive to stop them from getting in field goal range, and they get the win. But if you do that against Clemson or Florida, any of these top teams that they're going to play this year, you're going to lose. Like you're not going to be as fortunate with bad clock management against the plethora of top 25 teams Miami plays. And it frustrates me so much because Miami's there. They're on the cusp of being like a playoff team. We have them in the playoffs in our own rankings. But if you do stuff like that, you're not going to win games. And it's so frustrating. Every single time it happens, it makes me so mad. Cristobal has to figure it out. He just does.
Yeah, there's not a stadium in FBS that doesn't have a board somewhere that says the timeouts on the board, especially Hard Rock Stadium, which is also the home of the Miami Dolphins. There are boards everywhere. All you have to do is look up or look to the left or look to the right. Like, come on, dude. Especially after losing to Georgia Tech. What was it? Well, was it last year? No, 2 years ago. Oh, it was last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. After that, I would only be thinking about clock management constantly. But then it almost happens again. Obviously, as you said, the defense stepped up for them. And then for Notre Dame, they had Riley Leonard, who was an experienced quarterback last year, and they only ran the ball. They only ran the ball and it got them to the national championship. So why, when you have an inexperienced quarterback and CJ Carr, obviously his first start, you're putting it all on him already? It's not like they were losing by a lot at any point. It was a close game through and through. And if you really felt that bad about like you need to get him touches or whatever, do some play action, but run first. It doesn't work unless you run first. And yeah, Jeremiah Love, I'm sure he was pissed. I'm sure he was pissed after the game. He knows about it. This is a guy that had his knee falling apart during the playoffs last year, said, I'm not going to hurdle guys, and then hurdles guys. And he's like, oh, I did that, all of that for this? Like, come on, guys. It's a big game. Obviously, we'll see if they'll bounce back at or home against Texas A&M, excuse me. But yeah, you got to get him involved. So yeah, there was some shakiness on both sides of that. But overall, classic game, a great game to end off week one. I'm not even going to consider UNC and TCU as the ender of week one. But that game was, in my opinion, and really just good stuff in terms of the football side of it
Yeah.
there. So final negative here. It's kind of a group thing. There's not too many points to it, but and you guys out there, you're probably going to think I'm a Big Ten hater. I'm not. This is just the performance that was given to me here. The bottom of the Big Ten was terrible this weekend. Northwestern lost 23-3 against Tulane. Now, yes, Tulane is our G5 pick. They look very good, but you're in the P4. You shouldn't be losing by 20 to Tulane. Rutgers, they won. The rest of these teams actually won. But they barely beat Ohio at home and gave up 31 points to a MAC team that I don't even think is going to end up winning the MAC. Obviously, we'll see what it's like. But I watched that game and they look bad. Defensively, they look bad. Ohio was able to pass the ball, run it up and down the field. It was a shootout against a MAC team. Like, you're going to be playing Oregon in a couple of weeks. How do you think that's going to go? Nebraska got bailed out by a late interception against Cincinnati. And while Cincinnati is a better team than Ohio, they're the bottom of the Big 12. And if you're going to be a Big Ten commissioner, the talk of the Big Ten and the SEC, quite frankly, was, oh, let's add more playoff spots for our conference. If the bottom of your conference looks like this and they win, but they win in bad fashion, it's not going to work. You can't convince me that it's not only about money. It's not about competition. It's just about the check there. And then to end it all off, Wisconsin. Luke Fickell is on the hottest of hot seats right now. And you go out and you're leading Miami of Ohio 3-0 at halftime and you win the game 17-0. Now, Billy Edwards got injured, but it's not an excuse. Wisconsin's always been able to run the ball, and Miami of Ohio stood them up for like most of the entire game. It was embarrassing. My dad is a Wisconsin fan. He turned it off. He was like, I don't even want to watch it. He did end up watching it, of course, but he was very angry, and I would be too if I was a Wisconsin fan. It was just really ugly, ugly football. Like, yes, the top of the Big Ten is the best. It's right there with the SEC, but the bottom is falling out of this conference. And as we expand, we'll see. UCLA as well. I forgot to mention them, but they got drummed by Utah. And it's just a bad look. It's a bad look.
Yeah, it certainly is a bad look. I will say the only saving grace for the bottom teams of the Big Ten was that Maryland looked good. Malik
Yes.
Washington had a great game.
Yes.
He was a guy I was going to have in my positives. He was an honorable mention. But yeah, I agree. The bottom of the Big Ten looked rough. And I agree when all of the talk in the offseason is trying to get more guaranteed spots for your conferences, you have to have a top to bottom strong conference. And if
Yeah.
you're struggling against out of conference FCS or G5 opponents, what are we talking about here? And I'm going to be critical about the Big Ten. Obviously, I'm now kind of a de facto Big Ten guy with Oregon going in. But yeah, it's a bad look. I mean, you can even make the case while they did win, Iowa didn't look that convincing against Albany. They got a good win, but again, it's expected. But then, like, you look at a similar matchup, Missouri versus Central Arkansas in the SEC.
Yeah.
Dominant win for Missouri.
Oh,
Even Mississippi State looked phenomenal in their out of conference game. A team that you and I think are horrible.
yeah.
Um, and our Auburn too, getting a nice win against the Big 12 opponent in Baylor. So I'm not trying to sing the praises of the SEC because I'm also very critical on the SEC. But I agree, you have to have cohesion and competitiveness from your top to bottom of your conference if you want to be talked about as the big dogs. And yes, we know Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, probably Michigan too. Those big four are always going to be competitive, or for the most part, always going to be competitive. But you have to have that trickle down where your whole conference is if you want to talk about being the big dog. And yeah, so it was definitely frustrating to see. I mean, I would even make the case in throwing Indiana in there too.
Yeah.
They looked horrible against ODU. So very, very frustrating week. But as I've been saying all episodes so far, it's only week one. We gotta wait and let these things play out. Once we get into conference play, that's where we'll know more about each and every one of these teams.
Yeah, and just for the sake of it, since I'm an SEC guy, I'm going to say a bad thing about SEC here. Kentucky almost lost to Toledo as well. So there was a case of that in in the SEC, but it wasn't as apparent as this. Um,
Definitely.
so obviously we'll see, but out of those teams, Nebraska and UCLA and Indiana, I think have the best shot to turn the season around, but like Rutgers, Northwestern, Wisconsin, I think this is going to be a representative of the rest of the season for them, and they're not going to end up winning many games there. But obviously, we'll see. I'm not going to say it's week one again, but oh, I did.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's the thing. This is the hardest week to kind of to talk about because it's just built on overreactions. We've only got to see him play once. Some teams like Iowa State, we've seen him play twice, but for the most part, these are all the first games. Everybody's rusty.
Yeah,
So we can sit here and freak out about any single team or overhype every single team, but once you get to the end of your out of conference schedule, that's where you kind of figure it out. Even the first two games of conference play, that's where you really know where your team stands. So we'll probably get more more stern in our opinions and more standing on them once we get closer to conference play than now. Because again, I could see half of these teams flipping how they're playing currently.
yeah, yeah. I definitely agree with you there. Um, you know, it that's the beauty of college football as we move forward here. So real quickly, we're gonna gloss over the AP poll here. and maybe give some thoughts on it. I thought they did a very solid job. Obviously, Ohio State moves up to one. Then we got Penn State, LSU, Georgia, and Miami rounding out the top five. Florida State jumps all the way to 14 from unranked and forgotten about. And then Alabama in return drops to 21 there. Utah gets in at 25, among some others. It really stayed the same other than that. A couple moved up slots. Texas drops to 7, Clemson to 8, and Notre Dame to 9 there. So, Andrew, any thoughts, anything sticking out at you that you want to talk about before we move on to next week?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about it on the TikTok. I think Ohio State in the one's fine. Some of the spots that confused me a little, South Carolina going up to 10. I thought they were fine to stay in that 13 range. Nothing really kind of I wasn't that impressed to have them jump. I think Virginia Tech's defense played exceptionally well. It was a closer game than I expected, so I was kind of surprised to see them jump 3 spots. Florida State, I think they're a little too high. I think that's a very reactionary pick. I think Florida State's a lot better than we predicted them to be and how I guess the whole country perceived them. So I'm happy that they're ranked, especially getting a win against the number 8 team in the country at the time. I don't know if 14 is the right spot, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Same thing with Bama. I don't know. Did they look good? No, oh, they were horrible. They looked horrible. I'm not ready to freak out about them yet. 21 feels a little low for me. And then I'll leave it with this just because I want to be brief so that we can get into week 2 predictions. I don't think Utah should have gotten in at 25. I think, if anything, Georgia Tech should be 25.
Okay.
UCLA, they're going to be fine. Like, they're going to be bad, but they're going to be better than last year, but they're nowhere near like a big win for your resume. And Utah, they might be a staple in the bottom end of the top 25 as we go through the season. I don't think they're going to be a Big 12 contender this year. I think Georgia Tech's sneaky in the ACC. They had a big win against Colorado where they looked impressive. I personally would have taken Georgia Tech over them, but not something I'm necessarily upset about. And then Iowa State, you and I talked about a little bit too. Kind of surprising. They're 2-0. At the time, they get a top 25 win against now unranked Kansas State. Dominant win against South Dakota, and they stay in the 16 range. I would have preferred them a little bit higher. I would have preferred them over Florida State, a little higher in the rankings in Michigan, but I'm not that upset about it because I think as we progress, if they continue to win, they'll figure themselves out.
Yeah, so I agree with you completely. I'll just add on 2 short points here. So first one, we talked about it a bit. Indiana, I think should have been out. I myself am fine with Utah, but I agree with Georgia Tech, and I also think Auburn, the way that they looked, maybe deserved a shout here to replace Indiana. I thought Tennessee at 22. I think they should have been further up, at least in terms of it. However, I don't think they should have been above where Alabama's at, not yet. Obviously, we'll see. Florida State as well, too high. It's disrespectful to a team like Iowa State, as you said. Oklahoma looked good. Texas A&M did not, but Ole Miss did. SMU did as well. So I thought maybe, just maybe, they should have been behind. Like, I think Florida State should have been in like 18th or something like that, maybe 20th. And Alabama, maybe the spot behind them. I don't know. I don't know how to really say it. That's the reason why I'm not picking the AP poll here. And then with a team like Texas dropping to 7, with the fact of the matter is that if this game was 21-7 instead of 14-7, they'd be ranked like 15th right now. I really think it, and I think part of it is like backtracking that they bought into the Arch Manning hype just as much as everyone else did, and that's why they were one. And I think the fact of the matter is that they should have never been one. So putting them at 7, I think, is a little low compared to how they were overmatched by Ohio State. And my argument will always be that the first rankings should be the way that it ended. That the season ended, that Ohio State should have been 1, Notre Dame should have been 2, just for the sake of things. Because it's not like we're doing playoff. We're not doing the bracket right now. We got 7 more weeks to get to that. So that's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's what I like to do. Kind of like the BCS had it year after year. But yeah, those are my only thoughts there. I think they did a good job overall.
Yeah, I think we've seen some really confusing and wild AP polls throughout the season. So this one, I think is pretty fair. Again, Oklahoma maybe could have been a little higher. Material looked pretty solid, broke a school
Yeah.
record, but all in all, I think pretty, for the most part, I think all of the spots are pretty fair. And so I'm not outraged at all. I'm pretty happy with how it all turned out.
Yeah, me too as well. Obviously, LSU jumps all the way up to 3, which is pretty nice for me, but that also means that it'll be more disappointing when they lose. I don't want to say if because I'm not that confident, but when they end up losing later in the year. Okay, so looking ahead to week 2, very weak week 2 for how good week 1 was, as we stated at the beginning. But we got 3 games for you. We'll just give some quick like keys, maybe a prediction here. Uh, First one is going to be the Cyhawk game. Obviously, Iowa traveling to Iowa State. That is going to be at noon. The Cyclones are favored by 3 points as of right now. Now, in our predictions, we picked Iowa in this game. I know Andrew's not going to change it, even if you feel it. Or what do you think? I'll just let you speak.
So I want Iowa to win. I'm not convinced that they will now, based on
Okay.
that game against Albany. It's hard because rivalry games,
Yeah, it's
doesn't
different.
matter how good or how bad you are going into that game, it's going to be competitive. If Iowa win, Gronkowski has to be better in the air. Throwing for 44 yards in a Cyhawk is going to lead you the game by 30. And especially too because Iowa State looked pretty dialed in right now. A good win against Kansas State and then a dominant win against South Dakota, which is still, that's a tune-up game. But if you look bad, that's not convincing going into a Cyhawk. And the fact that it's in Ames too is going to be a little bit concerning for the Hawkeyes. I'm still going to take them because I'm the bias. I got the Iowa family. We always rooted for Iowa and the Cyhawk. We want them to do well, but in reality, I think Iowa State will win it. I think they're right now they're more dialed in right now, but it's a rivalry game. I would love to see the Hawkeyes win, but I think Iowa State will.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna take Iowa State here. I think just being at home, their offense looked a lot more cohesive, as you said. Defensively, Iowa's better. I do think Iowa's better defensively, and we'll see if they kind of drag them into the mud and make it a slugfest, like it usually is. I feel like it's usually a slugfest, no matter how explosive Iowa State's offense is, because Iowa's offense hasn't been explosive in a number of years. But I think it'll be closer. I am going to take the points here at -3, but I think it'll be like a one-score game because it always is. It's very similar to the Egg Bowl in my mind. Ole Miss is usually always better than Mississippi State, at least for the last 7 years or so, and that game's always close. So I think it's very similar. A lot of people hate each other over this game, and it'll be a lot of fun to watch. But I'll take Iowa State in terms of my pick there. Second game, we were kind of reaching for straws here. The Arizona State goes on the road to Starkville to play Mississippi State. It's a night game. The cowbells are going to be out. It's going to be loud. Arizona State is favored by 6.5 on the road. What's your pick?
Yeah, I'm still going to take Arizona State. I'm surprised the spread's only 6.5.
Yeah.
I was going to say if the spread was a lot higher, I was going to say watch out. This could be a sneaky close game. Kenny Dillingham talked in his press conference this week about how they're staying an hour and a half away from the stadium because everywhere else, every hotel closer to the stadium is just a casino, which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean they're going to have travel. It's kind of been this is a weird matchup, one that we never really see. And while I don't necessarily think Mississippi State's all that good, they looked impressive last week. They're going to try to play the upset. They're going to love to potentially knock off the favorite for the Big 12. And we've looked so far this season, it's a very small sample size, but when we've had that SEC Big 12 matchup, and even a little bit last year, the SEC has been better. So I think it's going to be close. I think this is a game Arizona State will struggle in. I mean, they struggled last week in their game. They didn't look as dominant as I thought they were going to. So maybe Mississippi State runs with them for a while. I still think Arizona State will get the win, but I don't think this is as through and through as a lot of people think.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think until Mississippi State wins this game, I can't take them as seriously as I do Arizona State. They lost Scadaboo, but they're returning a lot of production. They played Northern Arizona, didn't look as good as you said, but I'm gonna chalk that up to just figuring it out, and I think they're gonna look a lot better. Sam Leavitt will look a lot more comfortable in this offense, so I'm gonna take the points with them as well. I think they win more by more than a touchdown. I think they cover there, but I would not be surprised if this is a close game into the fourth quarter just for the sake of things, because Starkville is not an easy place to play, even when Mississippi State has been bad. So it'll be interesting to see how they react to that. Obviously, staying at a hotel an hour and a half away, that's something that we were used to as D3 football players, but I don't know how D1 players really handle it. I also thought it was hilarious that every other hotel was a casino. Like, what are the odds of that? But I guess that's Mississippi for you. Never been, so I can't really tell you anything about that. But yeah, I like the Sun Devils to win here, win comfortably as of right now. But Mississippi State, man, if they are to win this game, I'll take them a lot more seriously in my mind here. Okay, so final game here, the game day game, the only big game I gotta say. Number 15 Michigan goes on the road to Norman, Oklahoma to face number 18 Oklahoma at 7:30. Oklahoma's favored by 5.5, which I think is probably spot on for where the spread should be. Bryce Underwood, first big test on the road. John Mateer sets the school record for passing yards in his first game. But what will that Brett Venables defense do to that freshman quarterback, and vice versa? Michigan's defense is very quality against Oklahoma's high-powered offense. Who's your pick?
I don't know, man. This is this is a really hard one. I was more confident when we did the schedule predictions. I think I'm still going to take Boomer Sooner in the Oklahoma at home, but Underwood looked good against New Mexico. He was zipping the ball in. He's not afraid to throw a block, which got me fired up. Um, but he's young. Brent Venables, he might scheme it up, try to get him under constant pressure. We need to see, like I said, our rationale when we took Oklahoma, or at least when I was thinking Oklahoma, is that this is going to be his first like real test
Yeah.
as a college quarterback. So is he going to be able to handle that? I'm not sure. Even if he does an okay job at handling the pressure, that still could lead to Oklahoma winning the game. I like what John Mateer's done so far. I thought he looked really good last week. I think he's going to continue to carry that momentum in. I think 5.5, that's a great spread. Yeah, I think a touchdown, maybe a field goal decides it. I think it's going to be a shootout, but I think just because I'm so unsure, I'm going to lean with the home team and take Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's the duality of college football right now. Like Michigan could very easily, and I'm sure they want this. They want this game to be like 20-17, whereas Oklahoma wants it to be 52-48 or something like that. It could very easily go either way. I am gonna say Michigan covers, but I'm taking Oklahoma because I just feel more confident about them. Bryce Underwood obviously pisses me off, flipped his recruit on the day he was supposed to sign with the Tigers. Looked good. His arm looks great. I gotta think that Brett Venables is gonna be ready, especially I know it's only one game, but to have that film is so incredibly important for a guy that has never played in college football before. He'll be able to do it. And similar to Ole Miss last year, this is the year for Oklahoma. They have to be in the playoffs or he's gone. Obviously, Lane Kiffin didn't get fired, but that was Ole Miss's team last year. That was their all-out NIL transfer portal, all the money in the world, throw it into Oxford. That's what's happening in Oklahoma. They got to win this game, especially before an SEC schedule that is brutal for Oklahoma. They play Alabama, they play Texas, they play LSU. I believe they play Auburn as well. They might play either Texas A&M or Florida. I'm
Yeah, they
forgetting
had
now which
they had
one.
7 top 25 matchups going into
Yeah,
week 1 on their schedule. So yeah,
yeah. So they need to win this game, just in terms of a resume, because I don't think they're winning the SEC. So they gotta win this game. I'll take Oklahoma, but I think this is going to say a lot about Michigan if they are to win this game or keep it close. I think it'll be very impressive if they are able to, and we'll see what Wink Martindale does against Mateer and Ott in that high flying Sooner offense.
yeah, it's going to be a fun one to watch. I'm excited for it. I think this is one of those matchups where we're going to learn a lot about both these teams and where they stand in their respective conferences, but as in the national rankings as a whole as well. I wouldn't be surprised if the winner of this jumps pretty high in the rankings
Yeah.
next week too. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that's going to be a fun one. So.
Yeah. And, with that being said, I think any final thoughts or are we ending off here? Okay. Well, this has been another episode of Sideline Signal. Obviously, we cannot wait for week 2. We're getting it rolling. Keep it going as we get inch closer and closer to conference play and the real meat and potatoes of the college football season. For Andrew, I am Tyler. Thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, comment. We'll respond to all of it. And remember to follow us on TikTok as well. Sideline Signal. We post a lot more often there if you want to keep up with breaking news, predictions, what have you. And thank you guys so much for listening.